Well, folks, in today's video, we're going to be doing something completely different than usual. As you can see, I've got several kind of locomotives right here. We got 2 A units and 1 B unit, and I got these through lots throughout the years. I got this one in 2019 in a random eBay lot, and I actually got these two this year. Some of you guys might remember this from one of my lot unboxing videos. Basically, the postage destroyed both of these engines, and I managed to get them mostly back together, but they didn't turn out perfectly, as you can see, and I don't even know if I could get the wheels back in this one, for example, properly. So basically, we've got a bunch of engines which are in terrible shape, not really worth a whole lot. They've been kind of parted out. But I don't want to just throw this stuff out, so I figured why don't we do something kind of wild here, and why don't we attach all these engines and make the super Santa Fe Chief. I don't know, I thought it could be kind of fun. It's not going to be realistic or anything by that means, but you know what? It's better than these engines going to waste, because yeah, these are in horrible shape. So yeah, let's try to do that today, and hopefully we'll come out with something interesting. Anyway, let's begin. So to start off, I just want to gut all the current parts which are still in these engines out. I am going to be reusing some of these so we can obviously power this thing, but we don't need all the parts, which is actually a good thing, because then some of these spare parts can go on to other projects. But yeah, for now this should be all right. I just want to get everything out of here, and then we can begin preparing the shells to be connected, which should be interesting. I've got a rough idea on how I want to do this, but I'm not 100% sure if it's all going to work. But we'll find out soon enough. Anyway, I think TYCO might have actually put an adhesive to hold this part in. It's actually cracking it. There we go. Perfect. Now what we're going to start doing is removing all the details on the back, because if you're going to connect these together, obviously if you have all this stuff, it's not going to go properly. So I've already done that a bit to this one. It was already missing parts here, so it didn't make a huge difference. But in this case, I'm going to have to be a little more creative, because this one's actually intact. So removing these should be interesting. But again, I have a rough strategy to go about doing this. So this piece is going to be pretty hard to remove. So I've got this soldering iron with this sharp kind of X-Acto tip on the end. And this will actually just cut right around it. It's not like a hot knife through butter, but it will get the job done one piece at a time. And then once we have that part removed, we can basically just cut off all the other pieces with a regular X-Acto knife. And it just makes things, I think, a lot easier. Again, I already tried this on the B unit, so it seems like an okay strategy. I can't really think of a better way anyway. And there we are. Well, I cut off the bottom part here too, just to make things a little bit easier for our next step, which is going to be removing all of this detail right here, plus the extension on the roof line. I don't know what happened to the plastic on this shell and the B unit, but it's really brittle. I think it had to have been sitting in the sun or something, because at one point while I was cutting off the bottom box here, I was cutting up, and the whole piece of plastic just kind of shattered. So I've lost a lot of this, and I wanted to leave a little bit of area here, because this will just make a really good spot for the glue to hold the shells together. So it's kind of unfortunate I lost a bit of that, but you know what? We're building a Frankenstein locomotive. We're not building Cadillacs here, so it's not the end of the world. Well, I've now got everything all kitted out to be glued together. I decided to do the removing of all the parts off of camera just because working with a blade around a camera to me just did not seem like a great idea. So yeah, anyway, it's all done now, so I think we should be okay to connect all of these units together. I'm going to be using this Gorilla Super Glue. A lot of people have recommended this stuff. I don't know if it's actually any better than regular super glue, but hey, I figured why not try it and see how it is. So let's begin. I did notice, unfortunately, TYCO is not a very, let's say, quality consistent kind of brand. So you can see not everything lines up perfectly with the lines. I also just noticed I've got a piece of plastic which I still need to remove. But you get the idea. It's not going to look perfect. But as mentioned before, we're not building Cadillacs. I'm going to put a fair amount of glue here just to make sure that this whole piece holds. I've got another idea to help permanently affix everything together, but this just needs to keep the shells together, mostly for cosmetic reasons. Anyway, let's try to get these. I put the glue on the inside, so we do have a bit of room to negotiate for a while until the glue sets, because I'm going to try to get all the roof lines and everything matching as best as I can. We'll see how this all goes. Well, here we are some time later, and I got the whole thing together. It's quite a large engine, as you can see. I'm kind of happy with how it turned out. I mean, it's definitely far from seamless. But, you know, as I've said, I'm not trying to build something perfect. But overall, you know what? I think I got everything to line up relatively well, so that should be all right for our purposes. Anyway, the goal now is to actually put the drive in. As you saw in the beginning, we had 3 trucks. I've tossed one to the side because we're going to just be using these 2. I've tested this drive. I think a professional had to have serviced this thing because you can see it's actually got brand new traction tires. And from just the little test here on the workbench, this ran really well. So hopefully it will work well in our locomotive here. But yes, the question of connecting all these wires should be interesting. I've already attach this extension, which hopefully will be long enough, but yeah, wiring this whole thing up should be a bit of a challenge. I'm also going to put the dummy truck on this end because you know, you may have noticed I glued everything back together but this part, and that's because obviously in order to actually put the trucks in on these TYCOs, you have to stretch the shell, and since this part is broken, I figured that if I glued it, it might just come out, but if I glue it while installing this, it might be okay. We'll have to see. While the glue dries, I'm just going to try to carefully wire up the front of the engine, which should be interesting. We're going to run this wire up to this thinner wire right here, and then this larger wire is going to connect onto this one right here. So I guess I'll try to connect the larger wire first. Well, it's now time to see if I actually even wired this thing up correctly. That should be fun. Alright, let's turn up the power a little here. Yeah, it's turning over. I'd say that's promising. Anyway, I think it's time to install the thing that's going to hopefully connect this whole engine together quite nicely. I found some scrap lumber, and with a jigsaw I basically cut down the sides. I took a random orbital sander and I sanded down the edges to kind of give them an appearance of a fuel tank, a really large one at that. And I took the jigsaw and I also just cut some small gaps in here so that these middle sections can fit. And what I want to do is I basically just want to fit this part in as sort of a giant weight. I don't know, I think it's just going to kind of make this whole thing look a lot better, so we'll see how this goes. It's possible it goes better in one direction. Let's test that out. I did have to cut it a little just to fit. There we go. So in theory, it should look something like that. I want to put a ton of glue just to make sure this all stays in place, but it looks like the trucks are pivoting fine, so that should be all right. It's also just going to really make sure that this thing has something holding all three of the shells together. I wasn't planning on going too fancy with this. I'm kind of thinking just 6 solid globs of glue should be enough to hold this okay. But I don't want to put too much in case it goes wrong, because I kind of reckon this is a one-shot deal to actually get it in. You'll also notice that I put the glue inside the shells just so that I can't smear it on the outsides. Anyway, we'll see if I can get this thing in. It's not cooperating at the moment. There we go. I just want to kind of get this all at the right level, so hopefully it can set that way. Let's push it down so you don't see any seams. Just kind of hold it at the level I want, and then hopefully it will stay like that. And that could be quite nice. Alright, and there it all is. I think that pulls it all together nicely, or at least about as good as I think I could make it. It's also going to add just the right amount of weight. Too much weight would be too much for a four-wheel drive system, but the wood should be kind of like a perfect balance, I think, for this. It will add just a little more weight so we can get a little more traction for the engine of this size. Anyway, I think there's only one thing left to do now, and that's obviously to take it over the track and see if this thing even works. I'll be very surprised if it can clear the corners on my layout, but we'll try. You know, I've almost been model railroading for 15 years, and I think I've got to say in that entire time frame, I've never built anything quite this wild before. I mean, just seeing this thing on the layout right now, it's just such a ridiculous looking locomotive. I mean, it's crazy. Anyway, I'm just really excited to see whether or not this thing can actually run or not under its own power. So without further ado, let's give this thing some power and see if she goes. Wow, okay. Doesn't even seem half bad. I didn't run it into the corner over there because I'm not entirely sure if it can even handle these corners. Let's bring it back here. Wow. I don't know, just seeing this thing right now, it's just so strange. Anyway, I guess we'll try to run it into this corner right here, but to be completely honest, I don't even think it's going to clear that store, but let's try it out and see what happens. Yeah. So we didn't make it terribly far. This is definitely not an engine which I think can handle any of the corners on my layout. It's possible somebody out there has a layout that has corners wide enough to handle this thing, but I don't think it's super likely. But there have been crazier things in this world, so who knows. Anyway, let's try to bring it back here. But yeah, there it is. It does run. Absolutely wild. Well, you know what? I achieved my goal, which was just to turn a whole bunch of scrap parts into something interesting. And you know what? It even doesn't work half bad, which I'm kind of surprised to see. So I'm overall really happy with how this whole thing turned out. Certainly not going to be everybody out there's cup of tea, but for what it is, I think it's all right. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed this video. And with that, I'd like to thank you all so much for watching.